The original 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade from Konami was a smash hit. When it came time to bring it over to the 8-bit NES, it was called TMNT 2, the arcade game. This is because there already was a game called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES made by Ultra Games that was also part of Konami. Later on, a second arcade game, Turtles in Time, came out, but when it was ported over to the SNES, it was called TMNT 4 Turtles in Time. Konami had already released a third Ninja Turtle game for the NES at the time. So, how does this game compare to the other games that were already based on pre-existing arcade games? We'll find out after the theme song.
Man, this is a real long chain for the nunchucks. What the hell? Oh, hey, this is Mark Rodriguez.
And I'm Johnny Rodriguez, and what's with the facial hair, bro?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious how it looks like if I actually let it grow for a while. Yeah, just for a bit, just trying something different. Maybe I'll have a beard for 2017, something like that. But I don't know what the big deal is, though. I mean, not the first time I had some facial hair in my videos. I mean, people have seen me with a beard on the channel before.
Yeah, but never on the Video Game Master Show. I mean, you always make a big deal about how you have to shave before every episode.
Well, I don't know about that, Johnny. If there's one thing I know about beards, it's they're very popular with the ladies.
Well, I think you grew your beard just because I did. Well, I wear mine better.
Oh, shut up, Moore. I didn't know, nor do I care that you also have a beard, okay?
Okay, well, today we're going to be reviewing TMNT 3, the Manhattan Projects for the classic NES. Let's check it out.
TMNT 3 The Manhattan Project was made by Konami in 1991 for the NES. It follows the same two-player beat-em-up action from TMNT 2 the arcade game with several improvements. The Turtles take a vacation in Florida, but that doesn't mean the Shredder's taking a day off from his evil plans. This time he made Manhattan float like an island, and also kidnapped April O'Neil like he usually does. And the Turtles have to return to New York to stop him. However, Shredder sends the foot soldiers to Florida as well.
As you would expect, you can choose any of the 4 turtles, Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Michelangelo, and they have a few new moves. First off, you can now throw the enemies by pressing down and the attack button at the same time. Every turtle now has a turbo attack move as well by pressing the A and B buttons at the same time. You lose health every time you use it, however, even when you don't hit the enemy, but unlike similar beat-em-ups like Final Fight and Streets of Rage 2, once you're down to 1 life bar, you can spam it all you want until one of the bad guys finally gets lucky and kills you. Another thing is that the turtle weapons actually have range now, so turtles like Leo and Don can hit enemies from farther away than Raph and Mikey can. You can also choose 2-player mode A, where your attacks hurt each other, left tap, or 2-player mode B, where your attacks won't hurt each other. You get an extra life when you earn enough points, and you can find pizza to refill your health. This is the only game where you have 2 pizzas at once if you're doing a 2-player game, so you no longer have to decide which one needs it more. And, unlike TMNT 2 the arcade game, you can select different turtles every time you lose a life, so you're not stuck with the same one during the entire game. You fight through 8 scenes in the game, but some are divided into several sections, so it feels more like 12 stages overall. The first scene is the beach as you're still in Florida, working your way back home. There are tons of foot soldiers and several traps here and there. The boss at this stage is Rocksteady, now armed with a harpoon gun. He still fights similar to the other games that have him as a boss.
Scene 2 starts with the turtles surfing back to New York. Here you face the foot soldiers, electric boss, and their worst enemy ever, horrible slowdown. I mean, just look at that. The mini-boss are these foot choppers. The second part has you fight on a ship with guns and these annoying things that shoot fireballs in 3 directions. The boss is Ground Chuck, who fights normal at first, but then he gets more dangerous after he grabs a steel pipe and starts smashing you with it.
Scene 3 is on the Brooklyn Bridge, but it has some gaping holes in it, so be careful not to be sent over the edge. Bebop drives by a few times and throws some bombs at you just because he can. The mid-boss of this stage is Slash, everyone's favorite evil turtle from Dimension X. Once you beat him, you continue on with the stage, fighting some Stone Warriors until you face Bebop again, but this time as the actual boss. In this game, he swings this chain ball thing he has attached to his head, somehow, and it's based on the head-spinning Bebop action figure.
Scene 4 is the floating Manhattan Island, where you fight all sorts of foot soldiers in all their cheesy glory. Then you go underground and face Dirtbag as the boss.
Scene 5 is the sewers, where you face the Mousers as well as more foot soldiers. You can also do this cool little moonwalk glitch in this particular area, isn't that cool? Anyways, the sub-boss is Mother Mouser, basically a foot soldier riding a giant Mouser robot that spits out smaller Mousers and fireballs. As you continue, you hit the subway and face the actual boss, Leatherhead, that wild and crazy Cajun gator.
Scene 6 is the Technodrome, where you face all kinds of enemies. The mid-boss is Razar from the Secret of Ooze movie. After you beat him, you take on the Shredder. However, this is not the end. Once you defeat Shredder and rescue April, he escapes in Crank's spaceship and you have to follow him.
Scene 7 has you take the elevator like most beat-em-ups do, except in this one you actually do run the risk of being sent flying over the edge. Once you make it to the roof, you fight off several enemies until you run into Toka, the other mutant bad guy from the Secret of the Ooze.
Scene 8 is Crank's spaceship, and you fight tons of foot soldiers and stone warriors. You get to fight another Mother Mouser as a mid-boss. Then you fight Crank, but this time he can split his body into 2, and both halves can come after you at the same time. After you beat him, you face Shredder, but this time he pours ooze all over himself and he becomes the Super Shredder.
Super Shredder is also based on Secret of the Ooze, though recently the current Nick cartoon has their own version of him. He has a fireball that turns into a normal turtle, but this time it's not a one-hit kill like it was in TMNT 2, the arcade game. Take him down and save the city. Now before we review the game, let's take a look into the game's oddities, starting right off the bat with the game's cover.
When you look at the game cover, what's the first thing you see? The turtles are fighting a Triceratops while there's tons of foot soldiers and Mousers in the area, and you can see Manhattan flowing in the background. What stands out the most is a huge dinosaur guy with a gun and a big knife. But for some weird reason, the Triceratops is not an actual game. You'd think he'd be one of the bosses, right? Casey Jones can also be seen on the cover if you look closely enough, and he's not in the game either. Since he is so small, I guess you can consider him a cameo, but it could have shown maybe a cutscene of him trying to keep the foot under control while the turtles were still stuck in Florida or something. Even so, Casey's cameo isn't as bad as the Triceratops, who is basically the centerpiece of the entire cover.
Now I didn't realize this until playing the game for the review, but maybe with them using the Mother Mouser twice, they meant to use the Triceratops somewhere in the game originally, but for whatever reason they just couldn't, and you had to use the same mid-boss twice. Once in the sewers, and once again in the Technodrome. I kinda think that if Triceratops was gonna be in the game at one point, he'd probably make more sense in the Technodrome stage, since the Mousers are almost always associated with the sewers, and Triceratops does kinda look like those final boss kinda characters. Now, before you get on my case on why I'm referring to Triceratops as just one guy instead of an entire warrior race, like the Mirage comics and the newer cartoons, just remember that back then, the 80s cartoon and the Playmates toy line did things a lot differently than the comics. When the Triceratops action figure first came out, the description on the back of the package made it sound like he was this dangerous guy named Triceratops that occasionally worked for Krang. Now, oddly enough, whenever they finally did decide to put Triceratops in the 80s cartoon show, they went with the original warrior race idea instead of it having be just this random thug named Triceratops. And they appeared in the same episode where Donatello hit his head and thought he was Batman. Yeah, the 80s cartoon was kind of weird.
And another minor note, this game also threw in the Future Toy as several bad guys. It's a complete opposite case here. In the Mirage comics and newer cartoons, the Future Toy is just one guy and a good guy. Here there's tons of them and they're all bad guys. In case you're wondering why they're gold colored, it's because the 80s Future Toy action figure was also golden colored, even though he was never in the 80s cartoon show.
Alright, now to review the game, I'm going to go first. Now, TMNT The Manhattan Project was totally awesome back in the day. Now, yes, I know it's Nintendo, it's 8-bit, there's lots of limitations, there's a lot of flicker and stuff, and some parts like the Sewer Serpent, it's just way too much slowdown, especially when it's 2-player, and you got all that shit happening all at once. It's kind of weird, because it's like if Nintendo, if they know that the system has those kind of limitations, I don't know why they throw so much stuff at you if they know that's going to cause this horrible slowdown. You know, it's kind of weird. But, I mean, that's all it was in the day. Lots of games had that problem. You can't really fault the 8-bit technology at the time. But the game in itself was a lot of fun. And the main thing was it was new. It was unknown. It was not based on an arcade. Like Johnny and I played the hell out of the original arcade game. And we played some of Turtles in Time and everything. But this was like all new. It was uncharted territory. And one thing we actually did was that we just read the instruction book, like, you know, the basic how to play the game or whatever, but then we just put it away. We did not want any spoilers on who the bosses were going to be, because, like, the first arcade game, it was all characters based on basically the first 5 episodes of the cartoon show, so it was like, you know, the usual stuff, Bebop, Rocksteady, the Stone Warriors, nothing too dramatic, because at that time, we didn't have all these other characters that would become more popular throughout the franchise, but now, with this new game, I already saw like a GamePro magazine article back when it was new on tips on how to defeat Leatherhead. So I'm like, whoa, Leatherhead's in this. So who else is going to be in it? And yeah, we were just like surprised, like, oh my god, they got Ground Chuck in there, and they got Slash in there, and then like Bebop is like tossing bombs and stuff instead of actually being the boss like you find out later on. But all of this stuff was just so epic. It was a very good time to be a Ninja Turtle fan back in the day. And mechanics-wise, it's a little easier and more fun to beat up the enemies. In the Turtles 2, the arcade game, the main downside was you can't really hit the foot soldiers at all. They'll always punch you if you try to hit them the regular way. Basically, the whole game, you're just playing it doing the jump slash to everything and just doing jump kicks to the bosses. But the way this game plays, you can actually, you know, strike the enemies and the bosses with your regular attacks. You're not forced to just jump kick throughout the whole game. So that also makes the gameplay a whole lot better. And the graphics themselves are improved a lot when you compare them to Turtles 2, the arcade game. But overall, it's just an awesome game. If you can still find it, assuming that doesn't cost like an arm and a leg nowadays, I mean, just get it. If you like 8-bit games, you know, you kind of know how Nintendo was, the limitations, just get it. It's a fun game. It's real awesome.
Alright, now my thoughts on the game. Personally, I feel that this is a really great value for your money, whatever the game costed back then in the day. It's a good sequel to TMNT 2 and a great game to play before TMNT 4. Yeah, it's kind of like a weird game they put in between, although TMNT 1 was kind of weird as well. But anyways, talking about this game, not the other games, the graphics are really good, the turtles are very animated, the backgrounds are pretty cool, but they're also very weird. The game, in many ways, feel like it's very long in certain aspects, and there's like too much filters here and there. But other than that, I feel like the game really is really good. It has great action. It's not boring at all. It's like a great beat 'em up game, and it really stands on its own considering the fact that this is like an original TMNT title that's more closer to a beat 'em up style of game compared to how TMNT 1 is. And it also stands on its own even compared to TMNT 4, which unfortunately the SNES version, unlike TMNT 3, the backgrounds are way too short. So I don't know, that's just my opinion. I think that's great. It's a great classic. In a certain way, it's kind of like an underdog kind of game because not everybody really knows about TMNT 3. But if you do get a chance to play it, you will like the game, you will enjoy it, and I think there's a lot of gameplay value considering that it is a beat 'em up and considering that this came out in that time period where beat 'em ups are usually like Final Fight style. You just beat people up and you go to 5 stages and bam, that's the end. This game really has a lot of gameplay and they really do have long levels. So I don't know, that's my opinion. and it's worth it.
Well, this wraps up another episode of Video Game Masters. This is Mark Rodriguez.
And this is Johnny Rodriguez. See you next time.